February 2nd, 1942, Western approaches. A small convoy from the 36th Escort Group pushes west through calm black water, crews drowsy at their posts. Then torpedoes strike without warning. German submarines attack like a wolf pack. Ships burst into flames, and within minutes the ocean claims steel and men alike. The destroyers are helpless. They can see nothing. In that darkness, the U-boats own the night, and the Atlantic belongs to them. Wing Commander Humphrey de Verde Leigh, a quiet staff officer at Coastal Command HQ, proposes something that sounds absurd to half the Air Ministry. Mount a ship's searchlight under a bomber, slave it to the radar, and turn night into day for exactly 3 seconds, the only seconds that matter. Engineers dismiss it as a gimmick, dead weight that will expose the aircraft. Leigh's response is simple. The radar already gives away their position. The light will just finish what radar starts. No. 172 Squadron forms a Chivanor with Vickers Wellingtons, ASV Mackay 2 radar sets and 1 prototype carbon arc light, a 24-inch, 22 million candle power lamp housed in a faired pod beneath the wing. The crews call it Leigh's lamp, then with dark humour, useless. Squadron leader Bill Bullock, a Canadian with a steel-edged voice and a talent for low-level flying, volunteers to take it hunting in the Bay of Biscay, the U-boat's nightly highway to and from Lorient and Saint-Nazaire. The physics of the trap are brutal in their simplicity. ASV Mark II picks up a surface submarine at 8 to 10 miles. The Wellington runs in dark at 120 knots, descending to 200 feet, throttles pulled back to keep the approach quiet. At 1,000 yards, the radar starts to fail, the pip jitters, then disappears. That's where the black hole used to win. Now the radar operator hits a switch that slaves the light to the last bearing and arms the shutter. Bullock holds the yoke steady, altimeter needle quivering at 150 feet, spray streaking the windscreen. The bomb aimer counts down. 3, 2, 1. The bay explodes into daylight. The Leigh light tears a white lance across the water and pins a conning tower in a cone of blue-white brilliance. Men frozen at the bridge, oilskins gleaming, a 20mm gun swinging like a toy. For one heartbeat, the U-boat is exposed and blind. The light swings with the aircraft's bank, holding the target in the beam as if welded there. The bomb aimer shouts, "Steady!" and releases. 6 depth charges tumble off the racks in pairs, fused shallow. The Wellington is already banking away, light extinguished, darkness slamming back. Behind them, the ocean erupts in 6 white geysers, then a 7th dark swell as oil boils up. The wireless operator marks the time. The navigator plots the position. The crew stays silent until Bullock finally exhales. That's for the ones we missed. Back at Chivanor, armourers scrape salt from the light's lens, while the duty officer writes a single, dry sentence. Illumination, successful. Target, engaged. Probable kill. Word spreads through Coastal Command faster than the official signal. The useless light just closed the black hole. Within weeks, 172 Squadron's night strike rate climbs off the floor. The Germans don't know it yet, but the rules have changed. Night is no longer theirs by default. The Bay of Biscay, their safe highway, now has a trap built into those last 1,000 yards, and the trigger is a switch under a tired radar operator's thumb. On a whiteboard at HQ, Leigh draws 2 arrows. Contact, approach, blind, the old way, and beneath it, contact, approach, light, kill. Someone has scrawled a note in pencil beside his name. Give the man a dozen more. The requisition for lights reads, urgent operational necessity. Somewhere west of Brest, a U-boat captain scans a black, empty horizon and smiles. He still believes the dark will save him. He has 15 nights to learn otherwise. The learning curve for the crews was brutal and fast. A Leigh light wasn't magic. It demanded precision flying at hair-raising low altitude, flawless radar work, and a bomb aimer who could drop charges by instinct while the world flashed white. The first missions brought near misses and drenched crews, engines coughing in sea spray, lamps fouling with salt, landing gear screaming from repeated low passes. But each failed run taught one clear lesson. Timing mattered more than firepower. The radar gave the approach. The lamp secured the kill. Miss either, and you still lost men. 172 Squadron's tactics evolved into choreography. The ASV operator kept his needle locked on the pip, feeding bearing updates to the pilot. The Wellington descended to 150-200 feet, throttled back to reduce wake, while the navigator called out range. At 1,000 to 1,500 yards, the pip faded, the dangerous blind spot, and crews trained the pilot to roll into a shallow bank that would position the searchlight exactly over the last radar bearing. The wireless operator muffled the engine note with feathered props, while the bomb aimer braced his knees against the floor plate. At 500 yards, the operator slashed the light on. Everyone had 3 seconds to do their job, and 3 seconds was enough. The first dozen confirmed kills in the Bay of Biscay followed the same pattern. A surfaced Type 7 U-boat punching diesel smoke into the night. Lookouts squinting at a horizon that suddenly became daylight. A Wellington screaming overhead. A blaze of white. Then depth charges hammering the sea. Survivors in oilskins, blinded by glare, were hauled aboard corvettes racing in from the convoy screen. Intelligence officers back in London counted hull numbers, matched logs, and slowly confirmed what the air crews already knew. The Leigh light was turning the U-boat's nighttime sanctuary into a killing ground. The German reaction came fast and hard. U-boat captains who had relied on darkness faced a new problem: dive time. Previously, a captain could spot a plane, crash dive, and reach safe depth before bombs arrived. The Leigh light changed the equation. Planes found them late, but caught them still surfaced. Men who had perfected the art of twilight running learned that surfacing at night now meant exposure. U-boat doctrine shifted. Surface only under weather cover, move in short bursts, scatter when radar detects aircraft. Captains ordered crews to cut running lights, blacken reflective metal, and post lookouts on constant watch. But vigilance didn't help when the water itself blazed like noon for 3 seconds. The German ports, Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, and the bay's submarine pens, became nervous places. U-boat flag mounts were reinforced with extra 20mm and 37mm AA positions trained to sweep upward at the beam. Crews watched the sky for telltale low approaches, and some boats tried to fight back with concentrated flak. That occasionally worked. Several Wellingtons returned with holes and cracked windows. But it was a losing trade. A U-boat's cramped gun decks and limited AA positions were poor defence against a bomber's speed and angle of attack. The plane could peel away the instant its lamp pinned the conning tower. The sub's rounds either missed or scored only glancing hits. The Germans also tried electronic countermeasures. They fitted receivers to detect the ASV signal, sending worried reports back to Bastion. British radar is evolving. METOX and other detectors gave captains early warning, but at the cost of tactical flexibility. Listen and run, or stop and hide. Some commanders tried leaving port only during storms, or hugging coastlines under cliffs, where the lamp's cone might be masked. Others reorganised surface runs, staggering movements to avoid aerial beams. But for every tactic they devised, Leigh light crews adapted. Pilots learned to vary approach angles, chasing the pip into banked runs that positioned the light beneath the aircraft from new azimuths. Radar operators learned the moment the pip wavered and compensated for wave motion, timing the lamp release so the beam struck precisely where the depth charges would land. One engagement underscored the shift. A Type 7 making a battery charge near Ushant thought itself safe in the darkness. A Wellington from 172 vectored in, hit the light, and pinned the conning tower. The U-boat's flak opened up and struck the plane's starboard tail. The Wellington shuddered, but stayed in the attack run. When the depth charges landed, the sea boiled. Seconds later, a second aircraft, an escort Sunderland fitted with a Leigh light, arrived and illuminated survivors clinging to lifebelts. The corvette screen converged and picked up men who later testified that the glare had come like noon and destroyed their plan to vanish. The tactical impact on morale was immediate. Crews who once trusted the dark now feared a flash. U-boat captains began whispering about a weapon that turned night into day. The Leigh light didn't just sink U-boats, it rewrote priorities. Convoys adjusted routing, escort groups tightened night patrols, and Coastal Command poured resources into more lamps, better ASV sets, and training programs that taught pilots to become low-level hunters. The strategic outcome was measured in tonnage and dread. Fewer U-boats surfaced with impunity. More men died learning the new rules. And the Atlantic's night lanes, the U-boats' home court, were no longer safe. By mid-1942, the statistics were undeniable. Before the Leigh light, night attacks by Coastal Command aircraft had a success rate barely reaching 4%, a single confirmed sinking for every 25 radar contacts. After the light entered service, that number jumped to over 30%. It was the single largest leap in anti-submarine effectiveness during the entire Battle of the Atlantic. But the Germans couldn't figure out how they were being hunted. They saw only a pattern: U-boats surfacing to charge batteries and vanishing in sudden flashes of blinding white. Some thought it was a new type of flare. Others claimed the British had found a way to make the sea itself glow. At Lorient, Admiral Karl Dönitz's staff studied after-action reports from surviving U-boat crews. The details were consistent: a faint radar warning tone, then seconds later, a white light brighter than daylight, then impact. The survivors' descriptions bordered on disbelief. "The light was too bright for night," wrote one petty officer from U-502, rescued by a fishing trawler. "It burned my eyes, and I could see the rivets on our gun mount as clearly as in sunlight." Another, from U-260, described it more bluntly: "Hell opened above the sea." Dönitz's countermeasures began immediately. He ordered new Metox R600 radar detectors fitted fleet-wide to detect British ASV radar before aircraft reached striking range. Crews drilled to crash dive the moment Metox screamed. But the technology war moved faster than the command structure. In spring 1943, British scientists introduced ASV Emkar III, operating on a new 10-centimetre wavelength invisible to Metox. The Germans had just trained their crews to dive at the old frequency. Now the receivers were silent, their warning useless. U-boats surfaced, confident the air was clear, only to be illuminated seconds later by the piercing cone of a Leigh light. Coastal Command's kill rate doubled again. That spring became known among U-boat men as the funeral of the second happy time. The Germans tried everything. New radar detectors, code-named Naxos and Flige, were rushed into service. They were temperamental, fragile, and gave readings only seconds before attack. BDU tactical memos urged captains to surface during full moons or under heavy overcast, believing moonlight or cloud cover would hide them from illumination. It didn't. The Leigh light could punch through both. Others tried decoy tactics, running surfaced in pairs, hoping one boat could fight while the other fled. That failed too. The light exposed them both at once. Meanwhile, the British perfected the hunt. Number 272 Squadron's Wellingtons were joined by number 612 Squadron's Liberators, and soon by American-crewed Catalina flying boats equipped with the same lamp. The combination of long-range radar and the blinding searchlight closed the last gap over the mid-Atlantic, the so-called air gap that had allowed U-boats to strike convoys unopposed. The U-boats' night, once their shield, was now a snare. On June 30th, 1943, Flight Lieutenant Tony Lunn of 172 Squadron spotted a radar contact west of Biscay at 0132 hours. The target was making 8 knots, likely surfaced and charging. Lund's Wellington dropped from 3,000 feet to 200, the radar operator calling range, 2,000 yards, then 1,500, then nothing. Lost him, the operator said. Lund's finger hovered over the light switch. The crew braced through the blind spot. Then, click. The sea erupted in blue-white fire. A conning tower filled the windscreen at 400 yards. Lund's bombardier dropped 6 depth charges from 50 feet. The explosions tore through the hull of U-502, blowing open ballast tanks and flooding the control room. She sank in less than 2 minutes. Lund's calm after-action report listed the details. Illuminated target, conning tower and deck gun visible. Explosions observed. Oil and debris. Position 46 to 10N, 10 degree 45 W. The language was clinical. The result was final. From then on, each successful illumination added to a grim rhythm. U-502, U-563, U-200, U-759. Each one caught, blinded and gone. By autumn, the U-boat arm was losing more submarines per month than it could launch. Coastal Command's Leigh light flights became the terror of the Bay of Biscay. Crews joked darkly that the Germans had renamed it the Bay of Blisters. Too bright for comfort, too deadly to cross. The psychological effect was devastating. Before, the ocean had been a friend to U-boat men, a cloak. Now it turned against them. Veteran commanders began refusing night surface orders, preferring to stay submerged, even at the risk of suffocating batteries. The change crippled their endurance. A submerged U-boat could remain effective for 30 hours at best. Surfacing at night had been essential. Now it was suicidal. German war diaries show submarines crossing the Bay of Biscay submerged, moving at 2 knots, taking 8 days to reach open waters that had once taken 2. Every hour spent underwater drained power, slowed their advance, and made them easier targets for day patrols. By the end of 1943, Dönitz faced a truth even he couldn't hide in reports to Hitler. Allied aircraft, guided by radar and armed with a single lamp, had turned the night into an execution ground. 42 U-boats were confirmed lost to aircraft using the Leigh light by year's end, and the true number was likely higher. The useless light had become a weapon of mathematical precision, exposing the weakness at the heart of Germany's most feared weapon. It had depended on darkness, and darkness was gone. January 1944. The Atlantic is no longer Germany's ocean. What had once been their sanctuary, the black surface of night, has turned against them. Coastal Command squadrons now operate across every approach to Western Europe: Biscay, the Irish Sea, the Bay of Gascogne, the North Sea. The Leigh light is standard equipment. The crews don't talk about luck anymore. They talk about illumination windows and approach timing. Night hunting has become science. At RAF St. Evil, the nerve centre of the Bay offensive, the operations board reads like an accountant's ledger of destruction. Chalk marks line the board: 172 SQN, 1 U-boat sighted, 1 illuminated, 1 destroyed. 224 SQN, contact lost in rain squall, 612. SQN, contact maintained, U-boat sunk. Each entry a cold summary of what the Germans call Der Nachtkrieg, the night war. The aircraft themselves have evolved. The aging Wellingtons are being replaced by Liberators, long-range American bombers modified with British radar and the same carbon arc light slung beneath the wing. Their endurance allows patrols deep into mid-ocean. Their new Leigh light Mk Bethurd burns at 90 million candle power, bright enough to cast shadows from 3 miles away. Pilots learn to trigger it only when already lined up on final attack, because anything earlier blinds the crew and warns the target. When used properly, it's merciless. One mission from 224 Squadron's record shows how perfected the tactic has become. February 9th, 1944. Flight Lieutenant Edward Smythe and his crew patrol 150 miles west of Brest. The radar operator catches a faint contact. Surface echo, 8 miles, steady course north. Smythe descends from 4,000 to 200 feet, maintaining radio silence. The pip grows, then vanishes at 200 yards. "Lost him," the operator mutters. Smythe doesn't flinch. "Light on my mark," he says. The Liberator hums through spray, engines throttled back to 1700 RPM. Click. The world explodes into white. The sea beneath blazes like polished steel. In the middle, a grey dagger of a U-boat frozen in light. Crew half out of the hatch, men shielding their eyes. "Steady," the bombardier whispers. 4 depth charges drop. 2 seconds later, the submarine vanishes under boiling water. The next morning, a Coastal Command Hudson photographs an oil slick 10 miles wide. In Berlin, Dönitz's staff refuses to believe the reports. "It's impossible," one signals officer tells him. "Aircraft cannot see in darkness." Dönitz slams his fist on the table. "Then why are my boats dying in it?" He orders new doctrines. Surfacing is forbidden within 300 nautical miles of Allied airfields. Boats are to run submerged during both day and night, surfacing only in fog. The new schnorkel-breathing mast, a Dutch invention copied in Germany, enters hurried production, allowing boats to run diesels while mostly submerged. But the fix arrives too late and works poorly. The schnorkel vibrates, leaks, and leaves its own radar echo. Leigh light aircraft learn to spot the faint ripple line it leaves on calm seas and strike anyway. On the ground, the British perfect the fusion kill chain. Coastal Command aircraft no longer hunt alone. A Wellington spots a radar contact. A Liberator picks it up mid-course. A Catalina closes for the final attack. Each shares coordinates via radio beacons triangulated by Y service direction finding. What used to be guesswork is now data. The ocean itself is mapped by probability. The longer a contact run surfaced, the shorter its life expectancy. Crews begin wagering hours, not weeks, on whether a boat will make it to open water. The odds shrink daily, and with each sinking, the myth of the invincible U-boat fades. Once, their commanders boasted of surfacing beside convoys to taunt merchant crews. Now they dive at the sound of an aircraft engine 50 miles away. The light has done more than kill. It has changed behaviour. Fear becomes doctrine. Dönitz's headquarters start censoring loss reports, afraid of morale collapse. Yet the rumours persist. A new Allied death beam, a weapon that turns night into day. Crews begin painting slogans on their conning towers. "Lieber Tag als Tod," better day than death. In the Bay of Biscay, the proof piles up. U-462 destroyed near La Rochelle. U-666 caught by a Liberator from 224 Squadron. Lighted, bombed, gone. U-297, U-707, U-771, all sunk after illumination. The total climbs toward 40 confirmed kills by aircraft using Leigh light tactics. Each loss forces Germany to pull boats from the Atlantic. By mid-1944, more U-boats sit in repair yards than on patrol. The Germans experiment with desperate countermeasures. Crews rig tarpaulins over deck guns to reduce reflection. Engineers paint hulls with matte black to absorb the light. None of it works. At 100 feet, the Leigh light burns through camouflage like sun through fog. A few submarines attempt to fight back. U-621 opens fire with quadruple 20 middams on July 13, 1944, as a Liberator swoops in. The gunners hit the lamp dead on, shattering its lens. But the light still burns until the instant the bombs drop. U-621 is destroyed. The next morning, RAF maintenance crews retrieve the battered light housing from the Liberator's wrecked wing. The bulb is fused into glass, melted from heat, but intact enough for analysis. The engineers smile grimly. Even broken, it had done its job. By summer 1944, the Battle of the Atlantic is no longer a battle. It's arithmetic. Convoys cross under near-total air cover. German transmissions reveal panic. Cannot surface. Batteries dead. Air patrols constant. A single device weighing less than 100 pounds has erased the advantage that once strangled Britain. The useless light now commands the darkness itself. For the first time since 1939, Allied freighters sail through night without fear. The enemy that ruled the black water is now the hunted, waiting for the sea to blaze white one last time. Spring 1944. The Atlantic. War is ending, not with thunder, but with a quiet, relentless rhythm. The thrum of aircraft engines at night, the flash of a light over the waves, the muffled roar of depth charges. What began as one man's experiment in illumination has become standard equipment across two nations' air fleets. The Leigh light now hangs beneath Wellingtons, Liberators, Sunderlands, Catalinas and Venturas, from RAF Coastal Command to the US Navy's patrol squadrons. The German U-boat fleet has been forced underwater, condemned to crawl blind and slow beneath the surface they once ruled. At RAF Beaulieu, Group Captain Leigh himself watches crews run through night drills. They call his invention the torch. He hates the nickname, but can't deny what it's accomplished. Between 1942 and 1944, aircraft equipped with his light have sunk or fatally crippled 42 U-boats. Dozens more have been damaged, forced back to port, or stranded dead in the water after emergency crash dives. The numbers are astonishing, but what strikes Leigh most is the shift in morale. "We can see them now," one pilot tells him. "That's all we ever needed." The German Navy tries one last time to adapt. New Type 7 ACs and IXCs roll from the yards at Kiel and Danzig, painted in experimental blues and greys, fitted with snorkels, anti-radar coatings, even acoustic torpedo decoys. But none of it solves the central problem. Batteries still need charging, and charging still means surfacing. The light has turned that necessity into a death sentence. BDU dispatches warn captains not to surface within 1,000 kilometres of Ireland. Even then, few boats make it out of Biscay alive. Allied intelligence decrypts signal after signal. U-413 lost, U-471 lost, U-672 overdue, presumed sunk. The phrase illuminated and attacked becomes a death certificate. On April 29, 1944, a Wellington of No. 172 Squadron flies a routine patrol over the western approaches. The crew are veterans now, 2 years of nightly hunts. Their radar picks up a faint echo at 1,800 yards. They drop to wave-top height, the light snaps on, the sea explodes in daylight. The target, U-772, homeward bound, its commander certain he's cleared Allied coverage. Within 10 seconds, 6 depth charges tear through her hull. A column of air and debris rises 70 feet. The Wellington circles once, twice. Oil slick, wreckage, gone. It's routine now. In Berlin, Dönitz's war diary reads like an obituary. Enemy air patrols over Biscay incessant. Surface running impossible. Light weapon continues to operate effectively. Losses unacceptable. His engineers plead for time to develop new countermeasures, higher voltage radar detectors, infrared camouflage, periscope-mounted search receivers. The Admiral knows better. He's fighting physics, not men. "They see we do not," he writes. "The night no longer belongs to us." The effect cascades beyond the bay. With U-boats dying faster than they can be built, Allied convoys sail with near impunity. Merchant losses plummet from hundreds per month to single digits. Supplies pour into Britain, fuel for the RAF, Sherman tanks for Normandy, wheat from Canada, ammunition, mail, and men. Every crate that lands on a British dock in spring 1944 owes its safe passage to 1,000 quiet patrols and one light switched on over black water. The Germans still fight, but their tactics collapse into desperation. Some commanders try stay-and-shoot doctrine, surfacing to fight back with flak. U-621, U-260, U-976, all attempt it, all die the same way. Others run their engines hot underwater, overheating, hoping to cross the danger zone before batteries die. They too vanish. A handful survive purely by chance, caught in storms where even radar fails. When the weather clears, the lights return. The Leigh light squadrons now operate almost mechanically. Crews rotate, planes refit, missions launch at dusk, return at dawn. The statistics look cold on paper, but to the men inside the bombers, each mission is personal. Every pilot remembers the merchantmen lost in 1941 and 1942, when U-boats seemed untouchable. Now they can strike back, and they do, night after night, mile by mile. May 23, 1944. A Liberator of number 224 Squadron spots U-373 180 miles west of La Palisse. The submarine sees the aircraft too late. The pilot cuts engines, glides, and at 400 yards fires the light. The beam catches the U-boat mid-turn. The bombardier drops a stick of 6 250-pound depth charges. 4 hit. The submarine splits, the conning tower disintegrating. Survivors crawl onto debris, blinded, screaming. The Liberator circles once and flashes its oldest lamp to mark the site for rescue. One crewman mutters, "They thought we couldn't see them." The logbook entry that night is simple, illuminated. Attack successful. Target destroyed. Estimated 50 men lost. That spring, British intelligence intercepts a chilling phrase repeated in U-boat signals. Gott mit uns in der Dunkelheit. God with us in the dark. It's irony now. The dark has betrayed them. The final hope of the U-boat fleet is to reach deep water before the next patrol sweeps in, before another unseen radar trace blooms on a coastal command scope. In the first week of June 1944, days before the Normandy invasion, the last major Biscay patrol by 172 and 224 squadrons takes flight. 20 aircraft fan out over the approaches, 6 make contact, 5 attacks succeed. Among the losses, U-821, U-373, U-629, U-441. 42 confirmed submarine kills attributed directly to Leigh light-equipped aircraft since 1942, hundreds more damaged or forced down. It's not glamorous, not cinematic. There's no dogfight, no aces duel. Just black water, one white flash, and the end of a myth. By the time Allied troops storm the beaches of Normandy, the sea lanes behind them are clear. Not by chance, not by overwhelming fleet power, but by quiet men in bombers, trusting a 90 million candle power light and a few seconds of vision in the light dark. The U-boat fleet that once terrorized the Atlantic is crippled beyond repair. The Battle of the Atlantic, the longest battle of the war, is finally won. By August 1944, the German U-boat fleet was dying faster than shipyards could launch replacements. The Atlantic, the same vast ocean that had once been Germany's killing ground, was now a graveyard. Of the 1,162 U-boats built during the war, more than 600 had already been destroyed. 42 of them, almost 1 in every 15, had fallen victim to the same weapon, a single searchlight bolted beneath a wing. At RAF St. Aval, Group Captain Humphrey de Verde stood beside a Wellington B-3 as mechanics replaced the carbon arc lamp that bore his name. He was 54, a quiet man, uncomfortable with publicity. His invention had changed the course of the Atlantic War, but it was born from frustration, not ambition. "They kept telling me it couldn't be done," he told a correspondent later. "That light and radar couldn't work together. I built one anyway." What he never said publicly was that the first prototype had been fitted illegally, without Air Ministry approval, by a sympathetic ground crew in 1941. It wasn't sanctioned, it was smuggled into the war. Now every long-range patrol bomber in Coastal Command carried one. It had become doctrine, not experiment, and its effect was measurable in tonnage. Between January 1942 and June 1944, Allied shipping losses to U-boats fell from 700,000 tonnes per month to under 70,000. In the same period, U-boat losses rose tenfold. The statistics didn't just reflect new technology, they reflected the total destruction of German naval morale. Captured logs tell the story. U-539's captain wrote, "The light, my God, the light. It is as bright as noon. The men scream that the angels are coming." Another from U-382. Every surface now ends in fire. We dive blind, half the crew deaf, the smell of burned paint in the air. By the end of 1944, the average U-boat sortie lasted 12 days. The average survival rate less than 20%. What began as a tactical advantage had become psychological warfare. U-boat men called it das weiße Urteil, the white judgment. The moment it struck, they knew there was no escape. Their world shrank to the inside of a blinding sphere, the sound of engines overhead and the thud of depth charges. For many, there wasn't even time to dive. Of all recorded Leigh light attacks, fewer than 5% of submarines survived the first illumination. In London, Coastal Command's analysts were already studying post-war applications of the technology: anti-smuggling patrols, search and rescue, even fisheries protection. But for the men flying those missions, it wasn't about innovation. It was vengeance. For the convoys burned in 41, for the seamen lost off Ireland, for the Arctic ships frozen and sunk in the Barents Sea. Each time a Leigh light turned night into day, it repaid those debts in kind. August 3, 1944. Flight. Lieutenant Arthur Mac McIntyre of 224 Squadron spotted a radar contact at Ura 128, 160 miles west of Brest. He descended, throttled back, and waited for the moment radar lost lock, then flipped the switch. The light ignited. U-667 was caught in the beam, deck still wet from surfacing. The first depth charges struck directly beside the conning tower. The submarine exploded, throwing fragments across the sea. McIntyre's gunner later wrote in his log, "It was so bright I could see the numbers on her hull before she went under." 2 nights later, McIntyre's crew repeated the attack on another target, U-385, with the same result. Coastal Command confirmed both kills. In the span of 72 hours, 1 aircraft and 1 light ended 2 submarines that had previously sunk 14 Allied ships between them. The mathematics was staggering. A single bomber, a few gallons of aviation fuel, and 1 carbon arc bulb had erased months of German effort and hundreds of crewmen. By late 1944, the Germans no longer considered night a tactical option. They shifted to daytime travel under cloud cover, depending on flak to drive off attackers. It didn't work. American escort carriers and long-range liberators hunted them, even in daylight. The Leigh light had done something even radar couldn't. It had forced the enemy to change when and how it operated. It had redefined time itself in naval warfare. In November 1944, the Royal Navy's Operational Research Section compiled the final tally: 42 confirmed U-boats destroyed directly by aircraft equipped with Leigh lights, 81 more damaged or forced to surface for destruction by escort vessels. Countless others driven away from convoy routes, reducing attack opportunities by over 70%. The report concluded simply: the introduction of airborne illumination has rendered night the enemy's liability. The U-boat war didn't end with a surrender. It ended with silence. The final German transmission from the Atlantic, sent on May 7, 1945, she read, "No contact. Batteries exhausted. Air cover constant." The submarine, believed to be U-1009, scuttled itself hours later rather than face the light. When the war was over, Group Captain Leigh received the Order of the British Empire for outstanding technical ingenuity. He never called himself a hero. "I only built a lamp," he told a BBC interviewer in 1946. "The men who flew into the dark made it matter." Those men, pilots, navigators, radar operators, gunners, returned home quietly. Their missions were secret, their success measured not in medals, but in ships that reached port. But every merchant sailor who crossed the Atlantic in 1944 and lived owed them a debt. The ocean that had once been a grave had become a highway again, and the light had shown the way. The Leigh light was retired from service by 1948, replaced by more compact radar, infrared detection, and new acoustic systems. But its legacy lived on, in every sonar buoy, every searchlight, every modern maritime patrol system that traces its ancestry back to a simple idea: if you can see them, you can stop them. 8 decades later, the original Leigh light from a Wellington bomber sits behind glass at the RAF Museum in Hendon. It's a dull, corroded tube of metal with a cracked lens, unimpressive to most visitors. But beside it, a small placard reads, "This light was used by No. 172 Squadron, RAF Coastal Command, 1942-1944. It illuminated the night over the Bay of Biscay and ended the reign of the U-boat. 42 submarines were destroyed. The sea became bright again." It is a quiet artefact of a brutal truth. The ocean's greatest predator wasn't defeated by a battleship, a fleet, or a new bomb. It was defeated by one engineer's stubborn refusal to accept darkness.